I'm Evie Alexander. I'm a British steamy rom-com author, and my books are, how do I describe them? I say that they've got a very British sense of humour, but essentially they're contemporary steamy romantic comedy.
They're fantastic. I have all the ones that I've read so far, I'm really enjoying, and I definitely am
Yay!
giving Christmas off script, so can't wait for people to read it.
Fantastic.
How did you first get into writing?
Oh, well, when I was at primary school, so I was about probably 6 or 7, I had a teacher called Mrs. Hayward, and she recognised that I had a real love of writing, and she bought me an exercise book. So it was just, a book with plain lined paper, and she said, "I'm buying this for you so you can write your stories." And at the time, you kind of don't really understand the significance of that, but it's a teacher, it's an adult going, "I see something in you. I believe in you. I'm spending my own money to buy something for you." So I wrote my stories in that. And I had, I think, a kind of my primary school experience, so up to the age of 11, was like this kind of halcyon, wonderful, creative, amazing time when in the British education system at the time, the idea was that you should let the children be more kind of self-directed. And so as a result, my best friend Jane was also super musical, super creative, super artistic. And we were just allowed to basically get off lessons, not do anything in order for us to write and create and draw. And so we did the most incredibly creative things all before 11, one of which was I wrote a musical called Brunei and the Fish Soup that the whole school put on.
Oh, that's
And we did
fantastic.
and also my sense of humor came out because Jane and I put on this nativity, which was like an alternative nativity, which was absolutely out there. So our star was Rod Stewart. Mary was a chain smoking housewife. Neil. Joseph was based off Neil from The Young Ones, which was a comedy out at the time. So he was a hippie, and the donkey complained, and I mean the whole thing was just for children was very, very off the wall and very out there. So I did a lot of writing until that point, and then in I carried on writing in secondary school. But what my biggest kind of memory of reading and writing was more specifically reading is reading Milton Boone in certain lessons. So we had these clear plastic folders which we had all our work in,
Yep.
and I think it was something like IT or computers or something techie, which was just like over my head. So I used to put Mills and Boone books inside the plastic folders and angle the folders up on my desk so that I could read. And then occasionally I'd look up and go, hmm. And then I'd put my finger inside the plastic thing and just turn the page.
That's fantastic.
So I was, and if it was a double lesson, I could get through a whole Mills and Boone in one double
Oh,
lesson.
that's so good.
So, I mean, that was my kind of love of, and then I was writing screenplays and I was writing short stories. And then I did a master's in filmmaking, anthropological filmmaking. And then it was more into writing screenplays, which I think is a million times harder than writing a book. So, so, so much harder. Um, and then I kind of through various things. I don't know how much you want me to waffle on. Then I
Yes.
transitioned back into books.
And that's how you got into writing rom-coms?
Well, I had been sorry, I'm so coffee this morning. Um, I wrote throughout my 20s, and I wrote a kind of semi-autobiographical comedy, which is never going to see the light of day. I tried to write Mills and Boone. So it really annoys me when people go, "Oh, Mills and Boone, it's just like so formulaic." And it's just like, what? And I'm like, no, you have no idea.
No.
Because if you try and write to a formula, they'll go, "This is rubbish and it's boring and I don't want to read it." And so I tried to write Mills and Boone throughout my 20s and I failed spectacularly. So I take my hat off to anyone who writes, those kind of category romances, because
Yeah.
it's really, really difficult to do. So I'd written lots of kind of books that will never see the light of day. And then my friend told me that basically I'd got this job which I shouldn't have done, because it was like the most, like, I'm a very self-starting, very creative hippie, like a hippie in disguise, and I thought that I needed to get a proper job. So I got a job working for the UK government
Oh no.
in defence,
Oh no.
which was just like the most insane thing. And so my dear friend Pash, who I've dedicated my first two books to, and she's just the best. And she said, you've got to do something for yourself. Because you just, all you do is work. You need to do something for yourself. So I said, oh, I'd like to write. She said, okay, write for 15 minutes a day and send me what you've written. So that was the start of, where are they? Hollywood, don't know where it's gone now. Yeah, Highland Games and Hollywood Games, wherever that one's gone. But I was kind of really paranoid about stopping. So I thought, if I stop, it's never going to happen. So I just powered on, and in 4 months, I'd written what then became Highland and Hollywood Games. And Pash is a romance reader, and so she knows the genre and she loves it. And so it was her who encouraged me. And then I had this massive book, which had to be split into two, which was a complete nightmare and took years. And then I thought, oh, okay, this is wonderful. And it was like I'd finally found my voice. I'd finally found what worked. I wasn't trying to be anyone other than myself. I wasn't trying to ape a particular style or a particular this, or go for a particular trope that people liked and I didn't. I was just being completely myself. And then it just, yeah, and then I thought, this is like the most amazing thing ever. And I finally found like my, go to a hippie term, my dharma, my kind of, my purpose, my life's purpose is to write these books and try in a very small way to change the world. Because I want somebody to read my books and look at their own lives differently and go, oh, I should be doing this because it's what I want to do, or I shouldn't be putting up with that shit because this character finally got over it. So yeah, I know it's kind of a funny ambition, but I think we all want to do something with our lives that has some kind of meaning. Definitely. And this is mine.
And a lot of people love your books too and connect with it as well. So I think you are slowly changing the world.
Slowly, it's so painfully slow. Yeah, it's there's a general idea that the more books you write, the more successful you become, and and each release kind of builds on the last. I've had the complete opposite, literally. It's like this, and it's so. I mean, I hope that we can look back on this in maybe 3 or 5 years' time and go, if only you knew what wonderful things were coming. But yeah, Christmas Off Script is so far, I mean, I think it's my best book. And it's, yeah, I've only got 10 pre-orders so far. So that's just a bit like, oh, really? Really? So hopefully one day, I know that I do have some readers who say, oh my God, your books are my happy place, my safe space, and and they changed my life. And I'm like, yes, I just need to multiply that by a few thousand.
Share the word.
Yes.
What was the process for writing Christmas Off Script?
Right, I've got such brilliant questions, and I made some little notes for myself. Process of writing. So it was the same process by which I write all my books, which is, so before I started the box book series, I knew how many books I was writing, what the family tree was, what kind of tropes, where I was going, what each book roughly would be. I mean, of course they're going to change, but I kind of knew the order and I knew what I wanted to do. So Christmas Off Script, I knew that I wanted it to be a friends to lovers and take place within a pantomime. So pantomime is something very, very British that, I mean, if you
we have the pantos here sometimes. It's my favorite thing to watch. They don't do it often, but when they do, I always try to make sure I go.
I love it. I just love it. It's just brilliant. And when you go to a good panto, it's got the most ridiculous innuendo which goes over the kiddies' heads, and then all the stuff for kiddies. I remember a couple of years ago, went to the Theatre Royal in Bath, where every year we go to the pantomime, and they did Aladdin. And there was this scene which was just like insane, where Aladdin and his brother, who's the kind of the buttonsy, jokey character, for some reason they decided they had to play this piece of music on a piano together, but they had to do it in a special way. So there was this fake little piano on stage. They went behind the piano, they dropped their trousers, and they just did this, going up and down. They were playing it with their dick. And it was just, oh my God, I love it. I love it. I love it. So with Christmas Off Script, I knew I wanted to do a pantomime. I knew it was going to be Friends to Lovers. And then I wanted to do like Cinderella, and then have Ella being like, and having a stepmother and all of that. So I wanted it to mirror itself. And then what I do is I start by, okay, who are our two characters, the main characters, and what are their wounds? So what is the part of them that's kind of broken and missing? And I always refer back to, I've got it with me here, the emotional wound thesaurus. So it's got a whole like this. So this is like being raised by parents who loved conditionally. So, there's all these kind of character wounds. And so I go through that and I go, what would work for these characters? And then I write a bio, like, okay, so what is their false belief? How does this make them act? What would give them an opportunity to overcome this belief? And I do this for both of them, and I write a really detailed backstory. So, I mean, before I even wrote a word of Christmas Off Script, it was probably about 20,000 words of just notes, and some of which doesn't ever go into the book. So I had a whole backstory with Leo about his job, but it never, it in the end, you have to realize, is it really relevant? Both characters don't have to have these massive wounds that need to be overcome. And I thought Ella had enough without, and the book, my books tend to get longer and longer. So I'm like, okay, just shorten. And so I get their wounds, I have the tropes, then I try and work on like what we need to find out. So what the reader needs to find out and when, and what are the main kind of plot points. And so there are themes in Christmas Off Script. So obviously there's the theme of her dad coming out of prison, there's the stepmother, there's her art, there's Zach coming back on the scene, there's a breakup with Oliver, there's obviously the main story of her getting together with Leo, then there's the pantomime. So we ended up with like 8 to 10 threads. Yep. And it's about being able to weave these. So every thread has its own arc, and being able to make sure that they all come in. The quiz is another one, and it all makes sense and it all resolves, and there's nothing left hanging. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I would love to say I was a plotter. I want to be a plotter, but often I have no idea how it's going to end, and it just evolves as I write it. It's very rare that I know exactly how it's going to resolve itself, but I know that by the time I get there, the story, it's just evolved and it's taken on a life of its own.
I guess that's how that creativity goes through as well. So you're not locked into actually having to stick to a plan. You can just follow along and resolve things as they come along.
Oh yeah, and it's beautiful. It's so beautiful because when I write a scene, I'm like, okay, I know what's happening in this scene. And then I could start the scene and then it goes somewhere completely different, but I always know that it's going to go somewhere better. And it's going to, I mean, have you read Kissing Games?
Yes.
Okay, so all the, I'm trying not to give any spoilers, all the story about Charlie's backstory to do with his piano teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not meant to be in it. That didn't exist. He didn't even play the piano. And then I had to see where they're driving in the Rolls Royce to Inverness to go shopping. And he turns the radio on, it's classic FM, and it's piano music. And then I thought, oh yeah, maybe, because, you've got this tattooed bodyguard. I like playing with dissonance and reversing tropes. You've got this tattooed ex-Special Forces bodyguard who's a concert pianist.
Yeah.
And so as I was writing that, then that entire story evolved. And I had no idea at the start. And to me, it's, when he goes back and resolves with his parents and he plays the piano again. And I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about it because it's super emotional. But that came from me actually writing it.
So you touched on character building. Do you do much world building? Because I know your books are contemporary.
Yes, I do up to a point. And I have to say, it always cracks me up when people say how vivid how much they can imagine it, and how well I describe things. Because as far as sorry, I'm going to cough again.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, I barely describe anything, and so which to me it's a compliment, because it means that the little I've given have enabled the reader to come up with their own like picture and image. So with the Foxbrook series, so with the Kinloch series set in Scotland, I'd obviously been to Scotland a million times, so I had in my head like how it all looked, but I mean still very vaguely, really. And also I love old buildings and National Trust property, so I'm always going around old castles and old stately homes. But then with the Foxbrook series, I knew I wanted to base it where I live, and so I live around Bath, Jane Austen's Bath, which is wonderful. And I grew up just north of Bath in a place called Corsham, which has Corsham Court. And so I just like, right, okay, brilliant. That's Foxbrook Manor. Corsham is Foxbrook. But then I kind of took Corsham and I transplanted it south of Bath to where I am now. So yeah, to me it was just all very, very familiar. And I wanted to kind of, bring my past into it. That makes sense.
Does make sense. What's your favorite? Did you have a favorite moment in the book to write?
There were so many. I remember squealing, just going like that with excitement when I got to the bit where Ella's coming down the stairs at the winter ball to see Leo, and she comes down the stairs and she realizes she's in love with her best friend, and then you split so that start the next chapter and it's Leo as she comes down realizing he's in love with her, and that was just like
Yay!
it was just I just squealed because I was just like, this is so perfect. And then pretty much anything involving Arthur Foxbrook. I mean, anything involving the pantomime and Leo's dad, Arthur, who is a complete nutcase. I just adored. And so with Christmas Off Script, I mean, this is another reason why it became so long. I actually pretty much wrote an entire canto.
Yeah.
So, because in order for it to work and to understand who played what character and how that was going to change throughout the book, I actually had to outline the pantomime.
Yeah.
And then, as you know, there are several scenes which I've actually written. So you think there's this great idea, and then you're like, oh God, I've got to write something. And also for Love Ad Lib, where Libby she does improv comedy. I had to write improv comedy. I had to write a show that she puts on. And I was just like, why have I just made this so difficult for myself? But you have these ideas and then you don't think that you've actually got to kind of follow through.
Yeah. It's like living what part of the things that you're putting your characters through is like, oh damn it.
I know. And it's like, why? Because I hate doing research. All I want to do is write books. But then you end up having to do loads of research. So for Our Unholy Affair, this one, it's a female vicar and a male escort. Probably fortunately, I didn't research the male escort that much. Well, actually, not at all. A friend of mine years ago made a film about male escorts, so I just remembered everything she had told me. But then the vicar side, I went and interviewed my daughter's primary school's vicar. So I sat for a whole afternoon talking about, religion and her journey and all of that. And so research becomes this enormous thing that I don't really intend to do, but then of course have to.
Yeah. For your characters, did you always know how they were the center of the story, or do they just come to you after you start writing?
As in the protagonist, the main
ones. The protagonist, yeah.
I kind of wish I'd made Foxbrook a little bit more open, because I want to write another Christmas book, but I cannot think of who that can be without kind of shoehorning some rando new person in just for the sake of it. So that's really challenging. So my author friend Margaret Amat, she writes in this fictional world in Scotland called Glenbriar. And every time she writes a book, she introduces more characters, which then get, and then more and more, and it's this world that goes like that. But I feel with Foxbrook, I've already created this world, and I'm like, oh damn it, how on earth could I, because if people invest in the whole series, you want to keep giving more, but then I'm thinking how. So
new development of outskirts, the town.
I know. I don't know, because I wanted to write a book. Oh, where's that one gone? I can't even find it. The Love Position. So have you read The Love Position?
Not yet. It's on my.
Okay. I won't say much, but there is a side character in it called Jessica, who's American, based entirely on my friend Jennifer. Because when I did my own yoga teacher training, I met Jennifer. Getting confused now. Of course, I had to change her name when I wrote about her. So now, when I speak to her, I occasionally call her Jessica. She's like, "No, I'm Jennifer." And so, I really wanted to write a series, because she's a great character, on yachts, big mega yachts, and she would be one. But then that's so far away from Foxbrook. I don't know what to do now, but I've still got plenty more books to write for Foxbrook, and then hopefully I'll work it out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to all of them. Which of your characters do you relate to the most, and why?
Oh, all the ones that are really insecure, and get trampled on by people. That's like, hello me. But I also really relate to the really ballsy ones, like Zoe and Sam and Estelle, ones who just don't take any shit, because that's what I want to be. They're loud and they're funny and they tread their own path, and that's and they've got a brilliant sense of humor. So that's who I kind of aspire to be.
Yeah, I think we all aspire to be a bit more ballsy, no matter what.
Yes,
However
definitely.
confident we are. How has writing and publishing books changed the way you see yourself?
I wish it had changed me more, but I'm getting there. I think the biggest lesson I've learned is to trust myself, because as I've learned, my natural tendency as a person is to ask people's advice when actually I already know the answer. And it's like I don't trust myself. And that is silly. And sometimes in the past with my books, I've given them to people, to beta readers, to read. And it has been a massive mistake, because they have made suggestions that actually, if I followed them, would make the book worse. So my journey, I think, is coming much more into trusting myself. Yeah.
I guess you always have to be sort of careful that the people that you're like giving your book to actually will give you honest advice, but also like sort of understand your story a lot as well.
Yes, I think they have to understand romance. So there's no point in giving it to someone who doesn't read romance. That's just utterly pointless. They have to understand romance. They have to understand the political climate in which we live. So, I'm aware of the kind of cultural hegemony of the US, and how how much their culture kind of changes ours. It changes the UK, changes Australia, changes everything. And so there have been lots of times in my books where I have written a word or a phrase, which in, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, it's like saying, this is a glass. However, to Americans, it's like, oh my God, they're like, what?
How dare you?
I don't understand. And then you think, fuck's sake, really?
Yeah.
Really? But I have had to understand that America is, the dominant force, and you have to cater to their beliefs and their worldview. I mean, of course, I did have, back when I was writing Highland Games, I had beta readers who basically said, okay, I don't understand what a pavement is. You spelt colour wrong and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, look, if I change everything into US I mean, if you don't understand what a
Yeah.
pavement is, the concept of someone walking down a pavement, you shouldn't be
Should be
reading
reading.
my
No.
books. So, and also I love reading books where I don't know what something is because I just look it up, or you
Yeah.
understand kind of what they're talking about. So there are lots of things I have not changed, like pavement or trousers don't become pants, because that's just
Yeah.
dark.
Crazy.
But other kind of more sensitive words, which in context, and actually they're fine, but because they might trigger someone
Right.
some tiny percentage, I go above board, I go out of my way to make sure that there's nothing insensitive in my books, or nothing that a particular type of reader might have a problem with. So that is something I'm very hot on, making sure that my books are not going to offend anyone,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
Yes.
Are there any books or authors that inspired you to become a writer other than the Mills and Boon?
Everything inspires me. I was thinking, so I read like all the time. Obviously, I mean, younger people don't understand what it was like being my age and growing up with no internet,
Yeah.
no mobile phones. And we didn't even have a television in our house till I was 12, because my mother believed that we should be doing creative things. And, it was amazing, because if you were bored, there was no TV, there was no mobile phone, there was no internet, there was books
Yeah.
and music and going outside and playing. And it was amazing. So I read and read and read and read and read. And so I was a huge, huge fan. I still am, with Elizabeth Googe. The Little White Horse is one of my favourite books ever. I've read it so many times. Swallows and Amazons, Little House on the Prairie, Laura Ingalls Wilder, Heidi books. I didn't read much Enid Blyton. Little Miss Pepperpot when I was younger, Millie Molly Mandy when I was younger. But yeah, I just read and read and read and read and read. So when I was a kid, it's all kind of inspired me in some ways. Lisa, in terms of romance, Lisa Kleypas is one of the authors that has inspired me the most. I mean, all my friends who are authors, I love their books. Everything inspires me. And it's funny because Lisa Kleypas, I would never write a historical, but she's just so good at what she does. So good. She's just absolutely on point with tropes, microtropes, characters, story. It's just
Amazing.
gold. It's amazing. Yes.
What advice would you give to a writer working on their first book?
So much advice. So much. The first is to enjoy the process and understand that if it is your first book, it probably should never see the light of day, ever. So, Highland Games, this is my first book. It's not my first book. It's about my fifth. But I've written all those books before that will never see the light of day. And I think when you do have your first book, is to put it out to, don't ever show your friends and family, because it's pointless, because they won't get it, they won't know what to say, or they'll just go, oh, it's brilliant, or they'll go, oh, it's rubbish, which is both be useless, they're hopeless. So send it out to beta readers who have never read your book, they do not know you, and send it out to as many as possible. And then when all the feedback comes in, go, okay, what is the commonality? What is the thing that everyone is saying? And then, of course, find a really good editor. But I wouldn't even find an editor until you've been through several beta readers and you understand that the characters are sound, the plot is sound, it's all resolved nicely, it works. And then get it to an editor.
That's perfect advice. You always, and it's like first draft is the vomit. Get it out.
It's funny because, so back to my friend Margaret, she can write a book in 6 days.
Wow.
I know, she is just incredible. She can write 10, 12,000 words a day. She just literally goes, I can't. I literally can't. And so she will then go back, and sometimes she'll go, insert scene about something here, and she carries on. I can't. It takes me just months. And so my approach is that when I come to edit, yes, there are still, I probably do 13 to 15 edits, but for me, nothing, it's not like having to completely rewrite something or taking something from here and moving it here. My book is more structurally finished and sound, but for me, it's the line edits. But I mean, I think that just depends on how you write how you write. If you're a kind of person, or if you're just like, oh, I'm going to spend, and this is me, 2.5 hours. Once I spent for Cookout Carnage that I wrote with Kelly Kay, I spent 7 days writing 350 words.
Wow.
It was the first kissing scene, and it was that difficult. It took me a week to write 350 words, and it was painful, so painful. But that's my process, and I've tried, oh my god, have I tried to be like Margaret or other writers and just write. Just cannot. I cannot. It's just not how I work.
And everyone has the way they work, and you just got to find what works for you. How do you stay connected with your readers?
I love my readers. I wish I could just talk to them all day. Instagram mainly. So via DM, obviously the public stuff, but via DM and voice notes, I will often, and I've got one of my readers, she's one of my listeners, she's a GP, she's a doctor up in York, and we've had so many conversations, and it was actually her who, when I nearly died last year, I had pneumonia, it was really serious, and I ended up getting on a video call with her, and she was like, Evie, put the phone down and ring the emergency services. I'm like, oh, fine, no. Just, Evie, put the phone down and ring the emergency services. Yes, I love my readers, and I stay in lots of contact with them if they want to chat to me.
That's perfect. And my final question is, what is the most important lesson you've learned as an author?
Oh God, I don't know. The first thing that came to mind was that people are mental. It's, oh gosh, there isn't just one thing. I've learned that it's very hard when you put your heart and soul into a book. You put your everything. It is literally your soul, your brain, your soul, your heart coming out of your body onto a page. And when people don't like it and don't respond to it and think it's just a steaming pile of shit, that's incredibly difficult. And I always knew that people, they're not going to like, you can't please everyone, but I think it's really hard. It's really hard when that happens, and it happens obviously, of course, all the time. So I think that's understanding that and trying to deal with it is really challenging. Trusting myself, and I think at the moment it's not yet necessarily a lesson. It's what I'm processing now, is to have faith, because when you put so many years into something, and let's face it, thousands upon thousands of pounds, and you don't have anything to show for it apart from you've got your lovely books. It's about having faith, because if I didn't have faith that it was all going to come good, I couldn't go on. So I think trusting myself and having faith is what I'm kind of dealing with most at the moment.
And I'm sure a lot of people really enjoy Christmas Off Script, because I'm really enjoying it. So I can't wait for people to
Which bit are you up to without any spoilers?
I'm at the pantomime part.
Oh, have you got to the Bonnie Tyler bit yet?
Not yet.
Oh God, that was just wonderful. And Bonnie Tyler, Holding Out for a Hero. I mean, when I looked at the lyrics for that, I would urge anyone who loves romance books to read the lyrics to Holding Out for a Hero, because it is just like the most, it's the most beautiful distillation of what we want from romance. And
Um,
it's, yeah. Oh,
definitely.
yeah. Oh, I can't wait. There's so much good stuff coming up that
Yeah.
you're about to read.
Okay, definitely going to be going back and reading, continue reading it. So
Oh, fabulous.
thank you so much again for the interview.
Oh, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course, I love your books and definitely wanted to talk about your Christmas one.
Yay. Well, I really hope people respond to it, because, I just think it's friends to lovers, it's Christmas. Hopefully, hopefully
It's
that's
everything that
just
people
it.
love.
Yeah, and I really went for it with the whole Christmas stuff. And also Christmas, because my husband is obsessed with Christmas. Obsessed. He makes Christmas puddings in March. He
Um,
makes his own mincemeat in August and the Christmas cake. He makes his own mince pies and he makes over 100 mince pies every year and freezes them. Oh my God, he is just
wow. Obsessed.
absolutely obsessed. And he wanted, when we got married, we discussed, would I take his name? Would he take mine? We would double barrel it, what we do. And he genuinely wanted us to change our surname to Christmas.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm not joking. And he would do it. If I went into the house and said, should we change our surname to Christmas? He'd go, yeah,
Yep,
yeah,
100%.
100%. We're now Mr. and Mrs. Christmas. Yeah. So, yeah, I have been very inspired by him, and so I wanted to make it super, 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 super Christmassy.
No, it's perfect. And especially coming up to Christmas as well. It's like perfect timing.
Yes, hopefully.
Yeah.